I go to work, I come home. I had been up all night because I had just tried it. My mom calls me and says, let's go to lunch. And I was like, oh, I'm not really feeling so good. I'm going to go back home. Well, I know he's there and we're going to do more. I'm not feeling so great. I guess I never hung up the phone. So we're sitting there. You can hear the lighter. There's some conversation. She knows exactly. She's hearing the whole thing.
Wow.
And we're just sitting there smoking crack.
As a parent, you're just on the other end. Can you imagine?
No.
Oh, geez.
I mean, no. And so at some point, it's like, oh, what time is it? And he picks up my phone and he goes, your mom's on the phone. I feel like we should have coffee mugs.
I know I had a coffee over there and I didn't even drink it.
Yeah, with the logo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Put that on the list.
I know.
Coffee mugs.
Stuff to put on.
Totally.
Okay, so what's up?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Kristen Peinado.
Hi. Hello.
She actually goes to church with me at Belong Church.
Yes.
And so just really excited to have her on our podcast here. And I don't know, I just feel like you have a really interesting story that you can tell. And so just thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I don't know. Does it feel weird having like cameras and
A
stuff?
little bit. I mean, I love being in front of people and things, but yeah, this is a little different for sure. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been interviewed for anything.
No?
No. And I talk people to death, so I think I interview them mostly. But
Yeah.
this is cool. This will be a treat.
I know. It's funny because when I first started talking into a microphone, I didn't know how to breathe. So I would talk and then be out of breath.
It's like, what do I do with my hands?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start from the beginning, like where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in El Centro, California, and that's on the Mexicali border,
Oh, okay.
Mexicali. And most people don't know where it is. So to give you an idea, it's 120 miles east of San Diego. People are
Wow.
like, isn't that Mexico? Yes, basically it is
Eh,
pretty much.
There's no sidewalks?
Yeah, we had some sidewalks and some paved roads, fortunately, but it's like where half the nation's produce comes from.
Wow.
There's a beef plant there, and it's just outside of Glamis.
Okay.
You tell people Glamis, they're like, oh yeah.
Oh, I know where Glamis
It's like
is.
the little desert cities you glide through, and you're like, who lives here?
Yeah, how did that happen? How'd you end up there?
My mom was born and raised there. My dad, they moved from Pomona at some point because my grandfather is a soil scientist. So
Wow.
he got a job as a professor and a soil scientist down there, it's agriculturally heavy, right? Half
Yeah.
the nation's produce, cattle. So soil is a very big
Yeah.
component to those things. So he came down there, would do soil research for the farmland.
That's crazy. I would have never thought about like going to school to do soil,
Oh my God.
soil
Yeah.
science. Like,
It was so boring. You couldn't call it dirt. It was soil, and it drove my grandmother nuts because he'd collect these mason jars of dirt, soil. And she's like, what are you going to do with these? Or
yeah.
he'd just go out in the
Yeah,
desert.
what did
and
he do
take
with those
photos.
though?
I don't really know, to
No,
be honest.
I know.
I'll
I'm
have to
asking
ask
you
about that.
soil.
I think they were just there to annoy my grandmother.
But that's crazy that you went from Pomona, well, your family went from
Yeah.
Pomona to there. Like
Yeah.
that's a drastic change.
Well, and somewhere in there, well, my grandparents met, they're from Oklahoma. So my grandfather is 100% Cherokee. So he's Native American. She was Swiss, very much an interracial couple at the time. So to know how that all fell together,
Yeah.
I'd love to have a little more insight on. But yeah, and then they go from Oklahoma to Pomona, and from Pomona down to Imperial Valley.
So the town that you grew up in,
hmm
what was the population like?
Oh gosh, it was so small. So there's nothing to do there for one. You go to school, it's not pretty to look at. There's not much trees. It's a lot of dirt and it's heat. The worst of it is the heat. The
Yeah.
motto for Imperial Valley is where the sun spends the winter. Okay.
Wow.
So
What a motto.
it'll be 126 at midnight at night. It's
Oh,
hot.
that sounds horrible.
It's miserable. So very small. Pretty much everybody knew everybody.
Mhm.
And my dad he had a private practice as a marriage and family therapist. At some point, he also became the only court appointed mediator in town, which was really fun for me going to school or going out because my dad was not liked by some people, right? Because It was his decision to say, you get the kids in the divorce or you don't get the kids in the divorce.
Wow. So he had a lot of responsibility in that time.
Oh gosh, yeah. It was crazy like to look back on it. I mean, he worked long hours, but yeah, so marriage and family therapist, but also a court appointed mediator.
Yeah,
So I'd be like, "Dad, what do you want to bet when we go out today? We're going to see all these people, you know." And some of them were excited to see him and some of them were not,
I bet.
you know? So it was very small town. And
Yeah,
they both grew up there. So they were from Brawley, which is the neighboring city, and they grew up there. But yeah, very small, very intimate.
that's crazy. I would have never thought like, oh, Kristen's from a tiny town in the middle of the desert.
I know. I know. And just at
So what'd you
growing
do? What'd you do like growing up? Like what was it? What was a weekend like with your friends?
oh, playing outside, rollerblading, bicycle, like playing with the water hose, you know, the really hot water hose that tastes like a water hose.
Playing with the water
Legitimately, if
hose.
it rained, which was super rare, you would be in the middle of
Oh
the
my
street
gosh.
making mud pies.
That's so
No
funny.
joke, but it was super fun.
It's like
I live
inviting all your friends
rollerblading.
over, like, hey, we're gonna play with the hose this week.
Totally. That's an 80s kid's life for you right there. Rollerblades,
Mhm.
like, yeah, 100%.
That's so
Girl
cool.
Scouts, you know, things like that.
Yeah. And so growing up, was church a part of your upbringing?
Yeah. So I was raised going to a Baptist church, very conservative. My parents got married in that church. I would eventually get married in that church. It's no longer a Baptist church, but I got raised in that church. So it was extremely conservative. We were
Hmm.
singing out of hymnals. It was just very old school. And so I was always raised going to that church until we would ultimately move.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you move not till you were married? Is that like that when you moved?
No. So what happened was
Or you
my
came back to get
parents,
married there?
I did, yeah, free church. And when you're getting married, that fits into the budget really well. So, and it was beautiful too because my parents got married there, so it was really
Yeah,
kind of
that's cool.
cool.
It's a cool story.
Totally. But at some point my parents would get divorced in the early 90s and my mom and I and my sister would move to Las Vegas.
Okay.
So from I want to say age 12 to 27, I lived in Las Vegas.
Wow.
Yeah. So then there's custody issues going back and
Yeah.
forth and new
So who
terrain.
lived in Vegas real quick? Just to clarify.
So so my uncle had a pool well, has a pool business in Las Vegas
Hmm.
and my mom you know started working for him. So it was me, my mom and my sister.
Hmm.
Um my sister's gosh, maybe 4. I'm 13, 12, 13 and we moved to Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was
And
me
your
and my
dad
little
stayed
sister.
back at the little
Yes.
town?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, and that's quite the commute too, huh? If you want to
Yeah.
go back and forth.
So holidays, it was like we're meeting in Havasu or Needles and we're doing the exchange and
Wow.
yeah, the whole custody exchange growing up
Hmm.
from start to finish is very traumatic.
Yeah.
Like super bizarre, traumatic, then parents start to date. It's really odd. And that mixed with puberty, right?
Hmm.
Like it's odd, it's bizarre and you're dealing with emotions and life situations that
Yeah.
you
And
don't know how to
I think
navigate.
the hard part too is like when parents divorce, they don't realize what's gonna happen with the kids, like the trauma that the
Totally.
kids go through, you know.
Well, and my dad and I had this conversation where once I became married and a mom, and
Hmm.
I kind of got what was really cool was after the divorce, when I became a grown up, I felt like I could ask my dad questions on
Mm.
as a peer, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really cool when you get to an age where you feel like, oh, well, I'm on the same level as my mom or my dad, and I can ask him these
Yeah, somewhere along the
questions.
line, all of a sudden you realize that they're just people. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
yeah.
that realization, when him and I would eventually have a better relationship, I was like, wow. And I told him, I said, Dad, like, there's no handbook for divorce. There's no handbook to raise kids. Like, if I was in a tumultuous divorce or even a, you know, fairly, you know, calm one, it's like, how do you navigate that and anger and splitting things and children? And, you know,
Mhm.
there's no handbook. How would you, nobody knows how they'll react, right? So looking back on that, it was pretty cool as a grown woman who's married with a kid. I'm like, wow, you had no idea what you were doing, just like I don't, you know?
Yeah. You think that like parents know what they're doing when you're a kid. You think like, oh yeah, my parents have got it all together,
Totally.
and then as you get older, you realize like, man, they were just trying to survive sometimes.
Well, I tell my husband all the time, Bob, I go, they really had no idea what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
but they really made it look like they did. And I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, and neither did they. Wow. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're just figuring it out as
totally.
more situations come about. Like my son's a teenager now, which is really strange because I was really young when like we had our son.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I still remember like the things that he's going through, like the
Hmm.
emotions that he's going through right now. And I just feel like it's so strange because now it's my job to like help him navigate it.
Right.
And the truth is, like, I didn't even do that great of a job navigating it myself.
Yeah. Right.
So all I can tell you is like the things not to do, as opposed to being one of those parents who like they
Well,
knew what to do, you
and
know?
those are our things where we're like, as soon as you say don't do it, we're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can see some of that now as a mom where I'm like, don't do this, or I'm going to tell him not to do these things.
Yeah.
But those will be the number one things he rebels against. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, man,
Yeah. It,
just you wait, kid,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You got life. It's gonna hit you.
Please just listen to my advice and
Yeah.
go on. Yeah,
It's a vicious cycle that you get stuck in.
totally.
And
I'm scared for the teens. You're going to have to let me know how that goes and tell me what to do and not to do
yeah.
because yeah, that's got to be
Yeah.
wild. Because
And they have the internet.
what, see, that's even scarier.
That's what makes it even different. Like you had a water hose and they got
I
TikTok.
had a water hose or AOL Instant Messenger. Yes.
So
Dial up.
that's what's scary is that um before like if you're raising your kid, like the mistakes were on you.
Hmm.
And now it's like it's on you and you have like the internet like helping raise your
I
kids.
can't even imagine.
And you don't know what they're looking at even like I remember being a teenager and I know that like if I wanted to do something, like I'll find a way to
Oh,
do it,
yeah.
you know, whether my parents know or not. And it's the same thing with like my kids too. Like I know that like if they're going down a path, like the internet's there to help them like find that path.
Oh, for sure.
And it's really scary.
Or paths they hadn't even discovered that they're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, hey, what's this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like my best friend and I were friends since freshman year of high school. She's like, thank God there was no internet when we
Yeah.
were in school. I'm like, no kidding, because I don't think it would be pretty.
All the things you would say.
I'd be canceled for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I
Yeah.
mean, because like there's a point in your life where you're saying and doing things that you're just trying things. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like you're trying to
Yes.
like I don't know, see how far you can push boundaries and then you'd be like, "Oh,
Absolutely.
I got to reel it back in." But now it's like kids don't have that opportunity to reel it back in because it's out there.
Yeah, you get a one-shot deal.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
so not fair.
No, it's not. And I'm just like, can you imagine all the mistakes and the things that you said and the feelings that you hurt?
Mhm.
If it's all out there and people are just crucifying you for it, I'm like, I don't ever want you to have a phone ever.
I
If I
know.
can help it.
I know it's so crazy.
So
I
scary.
feel like everybody feels like they have to have a phone now,
Yeah, I see that a lot.
right?
Yeah.
Like when are you gonna get them a phone? But it's like people
It's
survived without phones for
18. I don't know. I'm gonna wait as long as I can. Like,
it's
he's
crazy.
gonna have a jitterbug just in case of
A
emergency.
jitterbug.
Yeah. Yes, the elderly people's phone with the large buttons. All you can do is call for help, and that's it. That's it.
The jitterbug.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's funny. So tell me about your teen years though. Like so your teen years you're in Vegas now, right?
Yeah. So
What is that
my
like?
formative years are now in Las Vegas. So I have always been bullied throughout school, traumatically so, like
Wow.
traumatically bullied. And so coming from El Centro slash Brawley, there was no shopping mall. There's no on-trend clothing. You just kind of wore what fit. So
Mhm.
there wasn't like fashion statements or trends necessarily, at least in my perspective. And of course, chubby, overweight kid, you go to Las Vegas, right? And my junior high was in it literally the field butted up to multi-million dollar homes.
Wow.
You were in their backyard. And there's all these kids that are wealthy kids, and I'm in clothes that they've never even seen before.
Yeah.
So I was very much alone
It's like
for
someone stitching them together in your little town.
like, yeah, it was at clothing stores that no one's ever heard of. You know, it's like
Yeah.
no one had ever seen things that I was wearing. And so that made me a really good sores to pick on. So I did 8th grade by myself, lunch by myself, everything. Now I go to high school, which is the size of a shopping mall. This thing is huge. It's just thousands and thousands of kids. And so that freshman year, I had made, some really great friends. They were all seniors.
Yeah.
So sophomore year, I'm back at scratch. But at some point, I lose the weight. I'm looking cute, getting different kinds of attention in school. Would ultimately get like a high school boyfriend,
Hmm.
and I felt like I was doing pretty good. I was always very um straight edge.
Hmm.
Never drank, never smoked, never any of those things.
Which is really surprising. Like, I know maybe it's just me of like my idea of that I have of like Vegas. You know,
Oh,
like
sure.
growing up in Vegas, like it's one thing to go to Vegas and then go home,
Right.
but then like being there all the time and
Yeah.
seeing like people who are stuck there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got slot machines everywhere,
That's what I mean. Yeah.
absolutely everywhere, and smoking everywhere, and everything's 24 hours. It's
Yeah.
just very different
Would you
from,
would you say it's like, and I know this is a really horrible like way to put it, but like I grew up with a pool, right?
mm,
So I never wanted to go swimming because I
I
had
see
it
what you're
there.
saying.
Is it the same thing as that? Like if you're growing up in Vegas, then you're just not drawn to Vegas, or are you? Does it still entice you?
I would love to go back and live there, but not for like the strip or anything. I thought that the suburbs and the family
Mhm.
atmosphere was really rich over there.
Mm.
I really enjoyed that. And I thought it was really cool. There's always something to do,
Mm-hmm.
shows to see. To me, the strip was very much an island that you could get to in 15 minutes.
Mm.
And then once you're done, you're done. So that felt far enough away from me that it didn't feel, like anything like
Mm.
negative. But I definitely was never interested in gambling or drinking or
Yeah.
anything. Um, but in to the strip back then, and we're talking like 97, 98, very different than what it is now.
Mm.
So clean, so pristine, so nice. Kids could only go into certain casinos and unattended without an adult.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was very, very different. It was really clean and nice and a little bit more of a family atmosphere than like what it is now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Okay.
much so.
Couldn't have imagined it.
Yeah, there was a Wet and Wild on the strip. They had a theme park at MGM. So there were little things like that that was a little bit more family oriented. But yeah, so Vegas was cool. I really liked it once I found my footing with
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
So I kind of distracted you, but you were talking about, so you had a boyfriend at the
Yeah,
time.
so I got a high school boyfriend, and up until that point I had never tried any drugs or drank or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're in this relationship, we make friends with people, and this is where kind of life takes a turn. So we start hanging out with friends who, this is like juniors in high school that have their very own trailer at a trailer park. They live together.
Wow.
They had free reign. So they're like grown-ups. And they were very much into the rave scene and into drugs and things like that. Now, I never would have considered doing any of those things had it not been for making friends with these people and hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'll tell people, my story with drug abuse is very different in that I wasn't in a gang. I wasn't, I didn't have terrible parents who abused me. I never wanted for anything. So I had all of life's comforts, and the biggest hardship I had seen at that point was my parents' divorce and custody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point I'm introduced to drugs because I make these friends, and these friends make you feel comfortable and you feel safe when you're around a group of people that you are
Yeah.
vibing with. And you think, well, they're not gonna stray me
Trustworthy.
wrong,
Yeah.
right? And the way they're explaining how this feels, it doesn't sound as scary as people make it seem. So you're allowing things in.
Mm-hmm.
So I got into drugs, and gosh, everything just turned around.
What kind of drugs did you get
So the
into?
first thing I ever tried was at a rave, and it was ecstasy. I'd never even smoked pot until I was like
You're like, let's
17.
just jump in the deep end.
Oh yeah, and I'm like 14, 15.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are like raves that you had to call a phone number to find out where they were going to be. They
Wow.
were
They're
so
underground
discreet.
rave.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly what it was. And
It's
it's
like,
like
where's this rave at? And you're like, I don't know. And you can
they
hear the
would tell you
music.
within an hour of it. Like it was weird like
Yeah.
that. So you would show up to these warehouses, and I loved the whole dancing the night away, but you put in the drugs to it, and it was just like amazing. And it's all your teen angst and the things that you're moody or upset about are just gone. And you're like, world peace. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're like, how could anything that feels this good be this bad when it makes you feel this magical?
Yeah.
Right. And so from there, now we're just trying different things. Then it becomes speed, acid, mushrooms. So you're doing all the
Mhm.
things. And so that's kind of where the wheels came off the bus. And at that point, I'm not doing well in school. So I end up getting sick. No one really knows why or
Is this
what
your
it
this is your
was.
junior
This
year?
is my junior year.
Okay.
And I was never really great in school. I was too busy talking and, socializing,
Mm-hmm.
but I could have been had I applied myself. But so we're junior year, we're barely making it. And I get sick and no one really knows what it was or
Yeah.
what had happened. So I end up dropping out junior year, but still partying and hanging out and doing my fun things. I drop out junior year and start doing like it was called homebound. So it's like homeschooling over the phone for sick kids.
Okay. Oh, so you're that sick, huh?
I was that sick, like I just could not go to school.
What were your symptoms?
Honestly, it was like chronic fatigue.
Okay.
So it was like major chronic fatigue, but then at the same time, there was not a lot of sleeping either.
Mm.
So I think that was at the beginning of my, like I have chronic insomnia. So I now looking back, I think that was it. I think
Mm.
that was like, okay, that's what's going on. So lack of sleep, I was having weird body aches. It was a whole thing. And so that didn't work out. I failed at that. So I was just kind of like from there taking jobs. So I'm working, I'm going to jobs and things and I'm like I need that diploma. It just really upset
Yeah.
me. Here's my dad has this degree. He's a collegiate student and I just felt like I'm worthy of that degree. Like what are you doing?
Yeah.
So at some point I end up going to continuation school
Okay.
and we're talking age 18, 19. So super humbling to go back to school, 18, 19. And this is a continuation school. So very much kids who are either credit deficient, teen pregnancies, kids who in and out of the court system, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to continuation school. But it worked out great for me because it was very close knit, it was tiny, and it was at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my best work at night. Like and I did then because I couldn't, I was just didn't know it, but insomniac basically.
Yeah.
And so it was a really incredible experience. I have to say, we all knew each other. We're all from different walks of life. There are like kids in there who are major gang members. There's girls in there that are pregnant or getting pregnant, are navigating really tough home life situations. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
And I ended up like taking 12 classes at a time because at this point I was set. This was my goal. I have to graduate. Like, you're better than this to just let that go. So, my major goal was getting that diploma. And this may go off on a bit of a tangent, but at the time, Nevada had what I think you guys have it in California too is the proficiency exam.
Okay.
So, the proficiency exam began 1998, my freshman year
Wow.
of
Okay.
high school. Now, this exam states you go all 4 years of high school, but if you don't pass this exam, you're not going to graduate. You don't get the diploma. So here I go back to night school and I'm taking 12 credits. I'm doing the most. I'm volunteering for credit. I'm doing everything I can
Mm-hmm.
so that I can graduate. I end up getting all my credits accumulated early, so I didn't even have to finish all of
Yeah.
my year. And I had taken, oh gosh, I can't even tell you how many, at least 10 tutoring classes after school. We're talking into 10:30, 11:30 at night after night school for
Wow.
math tutoring.
At least you're really committed to this.
Oh, that was one thing that I was like in for the first time in my life, really, I felt like that was a motivator and a driver, despite the fact that like
Yeah.
I dabbled in drugs and partied here and there. This was a huge motivator. Well, so cut to I've taken all these practice tests and now I've taken the proficiency exam 3 times. You get 3 shots and that's it.
Wow.
Each time I miss it by like 2 points.
No way. That's the
And
worst.
like state of Nevada's putting on these brand new math concepts that even our teachers didn't know how to teach. We'd have teachers crying and saying, "We're failing you. I'm so
I
sorry."
feel like that's kind of happening again, right?
I don't know.
Like I feel like the math and everything changed
It
here
did.
in California, and I have no idea how to help my kids with math.
Yeah, Logan's in like first grade and I'm already seeing things and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
it's scary.
Yeah.
So I'm taking all these classes, and this would be one of the biggest heartbreaks of my life.
Wow.
Huge, because I'm like, man, you really persevered, and I really worked hard, and I did all the tutoring classes and all the things people told me to do, and to keep missing it by a couple points. So it's the end of the school year. We're about to have graduation. I can walk with a certificate of attendance, which I plan to do, and there were so many other kids who didn't have diplomas. They're the same boat as I am. And they had asked me to give the like senior farewell speech. And I had spoken to the kids about like whether you're graduating with a diploma or a certificate of attendance, I see you. I know what you did. Like I know you were here working hard alongside me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really tough. It was so tough that and we walked with our cap and our gowns and no diploma. And that would just haunt me too. So, like later on in life, I'm doing the GED exam. I probably took the GED 6 times. That's how bad I was with the math. Each time missing it just by a little bit.
Yeah.
It's every time you get those results in, it's just crushing. And so at some point I said, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. I can't. It's too hard on me to get your hopes up and then fail.
Yeah.
But then, later on jobs would want diplomas and things, which
Yeah.
is like crushing.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, so there I am. I take care of that. I'm graduated. I'm starting community college, but at the tail end before I graduate, I started with like a pain pill addiction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my mom, I had hurt my back, and my mom would sometimes have to take painkillers, and she would say, "Oh, here, take a half of this or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And I would take it and I'm like, wow, I feel fantastic. And I'd go to school and I was like,
What is like Norcos?
these are back then it was like Loratab. They don't even make those anymore, but essentially a Norco, yeah. I would take it and I'm like, I am working on all cylinders. I'm alert. I'm the best I've been. I
Mm-hmm.
can get it all done and I feel amazing.
Wow.
That's where that started. And I remember, like, consciously remember, I was never addicted to anything. Like, I'd experiment here and there. I consciously remember telling myself, you're forcing yourself into an addiction. This is like you are literally forcing it.
Mm.
This is the time to turn around and go back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept powering through and it got worse and worse. So at the time in Vegas, there were not restrictions on painkillers
No,
like there are now.
you could just go in and buy some.
You could go to any doctor you wanted. You could tell them you were abusing it, and they would give you more and more and more. So, up at some point, I'm seeing several doctors at one time,
Wow.
getting lots of painkillers, eventually getting onto oxys.
So how many pills are you taking a day then at this
Oh
point?
my gosh. I mean, I could go through a bottle of 190 in 2 weeks, week and a half
Yeah.
at the worst. It didn't last, that's for sure. And we're talking like two kinds of painkillers and from multiple doctors and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. So that just ramped up and got worse. And I became like a horrible person, like typical drug addict, stealing,
Wow.
lying bad. I remember there was this one Easter where I had started snorting the oxys.
Wow.
And again, I remember thinking to myself, take them, abuse them, don't snort them, right? Like, don't be that guy. That's where you fall off the deep end. And at some point, my curiosity got the better of me. And once you snort that one, you're never going to swallow another pill. You're just going to snort it. Then it got worse.
It just it ingests so much different.
It does. Yeah. It was just like faster. But the problem is you're doing more and
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. And
Wow.
so at some point, my mom is clued in on this and like, we have this Easter, right? This Easter Sunday dinner. And my brother, by the way, is a police officer and he's up visiting. And I have got powder all in my nose, not acting myself. Everybody's like totally annoyed with me and they know what I'm doing when I'm going to the restroom is humiliating. But there's a part of you when you get addicted to these things where you're in there, you're
Mm-hmm.
normal. Like John is in there but you're watching this other horrible John do these things.
Wow.
But you're so aware. It's like you're sitting inside of your body watching this person take over your
Just on
identity.
just on standby. Like,
Yes. Like,
wow.
what are you doing? You're stealing pain pills from
So
your
you would
grandmother.
so you have these inner conversations.
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
man.
Like, who are you? What are you doing? Like
Yeah.
depraved things. My grandmother's elderly. You're stealing her pain pills. My
Yeah.
mom's in pain. You're stealing hers until they're out. Like, they're
Wow.
out. They're
Yeah.
just gonna have to suffer because I needed them. Just gross things like that. So at some point, it gets out of control. Like,
Mhm.
I've tried to forge prescriptions, and oh, yeah, it got bad.
Did you get away with any of them?
No, well, no. I tried once and I was like, we're done. Well, I had tried to change a date on a prescription because I was trying to fill it too soon. And I take it to the pharmacy, and of course, they know. They obviously they see what I've done. And so she calls me up. She's like, we know what you've done, kind of thing. So I'm like, okay, I better get out of here. No joke. I'm leaving the parking lot. Here comes a police cruiser. And that was there for me, obviously.
Yeah.
They called someone. And so got away with that, but there was like a cease and desist letter sent from the doctor to my home,
Mm-hmm.
like by a messenger, and my mom saw it, and she knew I was struggling on and off at that point, but it was getting bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have like this great job at this point. I had just gotten a townhouse like of my own. I had a great car, and
So
I'm
you're
still doing all
so
this.
you're like functioning,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
People wouldn't pick up for a very long time that I was like a functioning addict.
Wow. So because you said your family, they notice it because they're around you all the time.
Yeah.
Sure, their pills going missing all the time
Well,
too.
they didn't notice for a really long time because things wouldn't go missing until it got increasingly worse. But I mean, you wouldn't have known for at least the first 3 years,
Hmm.
at least. And I'm still, working and going to school and doing all these things. It was when the oxys, when I started snorting those, that like the wheels ran off,
Yeah.
you know? So at some point, and I can't remember how, but I have this job and it's going great. And I had some sort of a total meltdown, and I needed to go into like a rehab. So they put me into a medical facility rehab situation.
Mm-hmm. Who did? Your
My
family?
mom. So my mom put me in, and for whatever reason, I think we're keeping my dad out of the loop on that. That was just something my mom was not wanting him to know about for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I'm in this facility, and I'm in there for 2 days because insurance decided, oh, we're not going to cover it anymore. But while I'm in there, I meet someone really bad. So I meet this guy who's in there, and once I'm out, we all go to AA meetings together. So we're going. I'm still using,
Mm-hmm.
totally still using. I got out and I'm using. I was in there, 48 hours. Definitely needed to be in there. Um, so we're out, and I'm friends with this guy. It becomes romantic, and totally not a good situation. And at some point, we lose touch. Go back to my job, go back to my life. Everything's okay. I'm still using a lot. And things were getting really dark for me and just using worse and worse. I'm
Yeah.
living on my own now. I don't really do well on my own for long periods of time.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Light ghosts. So it was just, and then two, being in my addiction, it's the first time I've moved out and being on my own. It was just felt dark and didn't feel like the right time to leave the nest, I guess.
Okay.
So I leave, or excuse me, I'm living there. I'm back from rehab, and I get back in touch with the guy. So I know he's out there running the streets and doing bad things. I don't know whose brain was in my body at that time, but
Mm-hmm.
the decisions being made were crazy. You would never expect, if you knew me, that I was someone making these decisions. I was thinking about it today. I'm like, it's wild. So he comes over, we're hanging out, and I know, I'm conscious and aware that he is a crackhead. He uses crack.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at a point in my addiction where I'm like, I'll take any high I can get. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's see where the wind blows us.
Yeah.
And so he comes over, and I'm like, I know he's going to offer it to me. And when he does, I'm going to say, yeah. This would then begin a 2-week crack binge.
Wow.
Full on crack binge.
So no sleep?
None. Oh no. No, no. I dropped a ton of weight, no sleep. Um
And does any of your family checking in on you at this
so
time?
get this. I go to work, I come home. I had been up all night because I had just tried it. My mom calls me and says, "Let's go to lunch." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not really feeling so good. I'm going to go back home." Well, I know he's there and we're going to do more. "Oh, I'm not feeling so great." I guess I never hung up the phone. So we're sitting there. You can hear the lighter. There's some conversation. She knows exactly what she's hearing the whole thing.
Wow.
And we're just sitting there smoking crack.
As a parent, you're just on the other end. Can you imagine?
No, no.
Oh, geez.
I mean, no. And so at some point, it's like, "Oh, what time is it?" And he picks up my phone and he goes, "Your mom's on the phone." And I pick up, she was just hysterical. "What are you doing?" "No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I heard everything."
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Now that's a God moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was like I had tried the crack 24 hours earlier. So now she knows. And we're on this 2 week crack binge. What is to be a 2 week crack binge? So this is I never knew anything of the streets. I grew up in the suburbs. I had like a blue
Mm-hmm.
collar family. I was kind of, I mean, I knew it was there, but I was never in that world. So cut to, you're in Las Vegas as a crackhead, okay? Like overnight. So now I'm not showing up to work. I'm calling and I'm not showing up to work. So that's happening. Meanwhile, all night long, we're going to Fremont Street. We're not talking Fremont Street experience here. We're talking Fremont Street where if the dark web was a place,
Mm-hmm.
it is unreal. Unreal how you see things operating from that drug addict perspective,
Okay.
like street drug addict perspective, right?
Yeah.
I've been in and out of doctor's offices getting my drugs, not on the street. So we're talking, we're out 3 or 4 in the morning and there are prostitutes. It's very obvious. I mean,
Yeah.
just, there's nothing's being hidden. There are people selling crack and it was wild, even in the daytime. So I'm seeing all of this and my mom is desperately behind the scenes trying to figure out what to do. So somewhere in there, and we're just running the streets, me and this guy, we're just smoking crack, we're out and about making really dumb decisions. At some point, she has contacted my dad, and my dad is now set in motion. He's trying to figure out how to get me into rehab
Yeah.
in California, got to get me out of the state. And so they're working on that. And
Is your dad living in California at that time?
yeah, so my dad's still in California. And imagine, too, from my dad's perspective, he didn't know that I had this drug
Even the pills,
addiction.
and now
Yeah.
you're getting a call that your daughter's on crack.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like it was really intense.
Do you feel like now looking back as a parent,
Oh my
like
gosh.
your mom should have filled your dad in from the beginning, or
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
There was always, from the divorce, stemmed this kind of hiding things or keeping things secret because there would, at some point in my like early teens, be custody battle situations, right?
Mhm.
Which I only saw my mom's perspective growing up. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking he's the bad guy,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And he's trying to pull us out of a situation that wasn't good, but I wasn't seeing it because I'm
Yeah.
getting inside. So that became this habit of, we're only going to tell your dad certain things because I don't want him to take you guys from me.
Wow.
Right. So, and then I'm thinking he's the bad guy. So we don't tell him certain things. Yeah, it was terrible. It's terrible. And
So you're on Fremont.
so I'm on Fremont Street. And at this point, well, cut to, okay. So I had, which I didn't know until years later, I had OD'd and had a seizure in my townhouse smoking crack. I wouldn't know until years later that that's what that was, that it was a seizure, that it was like an OD. Um, it was bad. That whole thing was bad. So yeah, go ahead. Were you gonna ask me something?
Yeah, I was like,
Go
okay,
ahead.
about this, like the OD thing that you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Um, so this is within the 2 week
Yeah.
binge.
Yes.
So what do you remember from that though? Do you just remember
So
blacking out?
yeah, so I remember being on the couch, all the lights are off, we're smoking crack, we're like looking out the window, there's somebody there situation, like so
Really?
bizarre. And I remember consciously thinking, I'm just going to smoke. And if it takes me, it takes me. Like, if this is it, I'm fine with it.
Wow.
Like, because I felt so gross and so depraved. And it's like my mom and my grandma are like pleading with me to come on, like
Hmm.
they're at my house every night trying to help me get away from this guy and this whole thing. And I remember thinking, you are so gross now. Like, wow, look what you did. Who cares? I'm cool if this is the way I go, I'll be fine. Like I'm okay with it. I literally thought that if this is the way I go, I'll be okay with it. And at some point, I remember waking up on the floor. I didn't know where I was, the year, my name. I didn't know what anything was.
Wow.
I'm coming to. And he's like trying to like do this, do that, and
He's like
here
talking to you, and
he's
you're like,
trying to get me to come to. And there was this really bizarre moment where I'm gonna get a little emotional because I don't think I've ever spoken about this. He had this look in his eye where it was like God was telling me that is the devil.
wow.
It was the most intense evil I've ever seen in anyone's eyes.
Yeah, I just got the goosebumps. Sorry.
It was really, I've never seen anything like it. It was pure evil in his eyes.
Hmm.
But at the same time, he's telling me, don't do this. This is all the crap I've done in my life. Don't do this. How bizarre, right? And I'm coming to this guy with this evil eyes. It just felt like pure evil was sitting next to me. He's pleading with me not to do this. You can't be doing
Wow.
this. Like, you
Wow.
don't make the same mistakes I
Yeah.
made. I did this, and he was listing some pretty, like, really bad things.
Yeah.
This guy's like in and out of prison, like, bad guy. He's pleading with me. I did all this. Don't do this. At the same time, it's like this evil was in the room. It was really bizarre. I've never seen or experienced anything like it. He took whatever money I had in my wallet and left me there. And I woke up the next day. Thank God I woke up. And he was at some hotel on Fremont Street. And my dumb self went and met him there. So now I'm hanging out in a hotel, a motel.
Wait, so
Yeah.
you come out of the seizure,
Hmm.
he's telling you don't do this, and he just leaves you?
Yeah. Well, he took all the money in my wallet
Yeah, yeah.
because, oh, what I didn't mention was I'm pawning all kinds of things so that to
No.
fund this. So I had gotten a paycheck. We went through it, and now I'm pawning certain things with him. I'd never pawned a thing in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and
He's
was
showing
pawning
you how to
things.
do it,
Oh
huh?
yeah, oh yeah. And like if a person cut to you know me now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who I was before. So the fact that like, oh my God, you smoked crack, you had this drug addiction, it even blows me away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it sometimes and I'm like, of all the people, right? Because you expect some people with hard lives and things. And I'm like, I know there's a purpose in there somewhere because he's taking someone so, like I said, blue collar family,
Yeah.
great upbringing, great parents.
Where drugs weren't a necessity to
Yeah.
cope with anything.
Yeah. And it's like, it's almost like to pick this obscure person and inject that into their life. It's just
Yeah.
bizarre, at least to me, look standing outside of it, looking like of all the people to pick to like just have a crack binge and go to rehab. Like I tell people later that knew me before and they're like, what?
Yeah.
You?
That's crazy though, because that's where you know that like Satan's working
Oh my gosh.
every.
The foothold is wild. Well,
You're like you're at a place where you're trying to get better,
yeah,
and that's where you meet like the man with
that
Satan in his
crossroad, right?
eyes, right?
It's intense.
Yeah.
It is crazy. And sometimes you you need outside forces. You just do. Because not everyone who's going to hit their rock bottom is going to be like, I'm ready, let's go to
Yeah.
rehab. It's very rare. I'm fortunate that my dad advocated for me for that. Okay. So then here I am at this motel and I'm days away. My mom has now told me, you are going away to California for a year to a drug treatment program. Your dad's already figured it out, found it. And I'm like, the hell I am.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not. She's like, well, you're going to have nowhere to live. You're going to have nothing. So, yeah, you are. At some point, we're like, oh gosh, we're reaching the birthday of it. So it's the eve of my birthday. I think I'm turning, I don't know, 22.
Why such a kid still?
Yeah. I lived a life between 14 to oh gosh, I did a lot of things. So, cut to it's bad. We're back at my house. Oh no, excuse me. We go to my house to get something. He's like, I gotta go to my friend's house. We're gonna pick up some money to get some more.
Okay.
He's like, but I'm gonna leave you here at this gas station because he's weird about having people come over. This is now my birthday, the morning of my birthday, and I'm left stranded at a gas station. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. He was never going to come back and pick me up.
Just took what he needed from you.
So I call my mom. She comes and gets me because she knows all this is going on.
So this is after the motel. He
Hmm.
just leaves you at the gas station.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But what I didn't know was he was out of the crack, right? So he's out of the drugs. He leaves me stranded. My mom picks me up. We go to my place because now I need to start packing. I've got to leave for this rehab.
Mm-hmm.
We get to my place and he's burglarized my townhome and he's taken my things to
No.
pawn them. He's thrown a brick through my sliding glass window. There's glass everywhere. And now I have like 24 hours to pack to leave for California to go to rehab. And now my mom has to figure out what to do with my townhouse, my car, my things.
No way.
So now we're dealing with the police. And at this point, I have from the crack cocaine, I have gotten severe pink eye to the point where I have this black eye. It was that bad. I was never struck or hit. And I have
Thank
this
you.
severe black eye.
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. And the cops had to come to take the report. And he's like, did he hit you? No, nothing like that. It's just he's got pink eye. It's disgusting. It's gross. So I look awful. I've lost all this weight. And the officer that was called to that, I actually knew. And it was totally
You
humiliating.
knew him?
I knew him. Yeah,
Wow.
that was really humiliating. And so this guy's out on the run with my things. Somehow they find him. But in the meantime, the officers that are taking this report show me his rap sheet. She goes, this guy has been at it for over a decade and he's got a rap sheet like this. This is a bad dude. What are you doing? She's looking at my nice place. Like, what are you doing with this guy?
Yeah.
And they take the report, they find him, take him to jail, and I am whisked away on an airplane like hours later to go to California.
When you're on your way to California, are you coming down from any of this?
Oh, yeah. So I get put on this airplane. They were terrified I wouldn't even get on the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
I get on the airplane. I've got this horrible black eye. It's humiliating. I'm still asking my mom for like a pain pill to get on the plane because I was scared. Um, that was really a blur. That really, really was a blur. Um, I don't remember. I remember getting on the plane, but that was kind of it. I remember getting
Mm-hmm.
into town and the shame that came with it was just I'm getting off the plane. My dad knows I've been running around with like some dude.
Yeah.
Gross. I'm doing crack and he knows all my dirty secrets and the shame. But I have to say that the number one thing that helped me through that was up until this point, my family that was aware of the drug addiction treated me like a drug addict. Rightfully so. I've
Mm-hmm.
pawned some of their things, my things. I've stolen from them.
Yeah.
I've lied a ton over the years. They're not treating me like family. They're upset.
Yeah.
I'm obviously, right? My dad treated me like, okay, all right, well, let's handle this and do it. And it was like, whoa,
Wow.
you're treating me like a human being, not like a bug under your shoe, right?
Yeah.
And that really made me so much more comfortable and really set the tone for the way our relationship would take a turn.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's
because
like he approached you with grace,
exactly,
and that grace meant so
exactly.
much more to you.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, ew, okay, well, let's get her some
Yeah.
help, and we're like, piece of crap.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, yeah, like he's acting like it's normal. It's like, gosh, and no one had ever taken that tactic with me before. And so I get there, and he has found a drug treatment facility, which is a nonprofit still running today. It's called Teen Challenge.
Okay.
It's not just for teens, it's for, I think it goes up to like, I don't know, 60s or something. It's completely free and it's all faith based.
Wow.
Yeah. And he found that for me, and it's the headquarters is out of Riverside, actually. So I go stay with him for a few days, and by the grace of God, the withdrawal that I had was just that I was very sleepy and I slept for several days.
Wow.
Yeah, I slept for several days and I don't recall being really ill, right? Like I would be from the pills. And so,
Your body was probably just exhausted.
yeah, yeah. And I still think about, I had gone this 2 weeks without eating. I dropped all this weight. And I remember like the first time I ate, my mom and my grandma took me out. And it's almost tear inducing when I think about how hungry I was. I was starving
Yeah.
when I allowed myself to not be high.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. And I just remember that whole week just being starving. Just, oh God, I just couldn't get enough food because I'd starved. It
Yeah.
was crazy. It was just desperate and sad. And so I couldn't go into the rehab just yet because I had the black eye, the pink eye, and everything,
Mm.
which was kind of also a God thing because I needed that time to mentally prepare. You know, I've come down off the drugs.
So you're at your dad's house?
I'm at my dad's house, just sleeping, and I needed that time to mentally prepare. I
Mm-hmm.
think he knew that because otherwise I was just not gonna let it in, let it happen. I don't know what I would have done, but
Yeah.
so cut to, we get to South Central LA. We are on Long Beach Boulevard, downtown. That is where this is. And it's attached to a thrift store, which is where you work out of. So you live there and you go to church there and you work there. And this is all Assembly of God based. So, and I say that because some of the rules would adhere to kind of the beliefs of Assembly of God churches.
Okay.
Just and I when I say that I mean like conservative dress for ladies.
Okay.
Um, it's just a difference of behavior, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I get there. Now I'm gonna be living with 50 to 60 women from all walks of life. All together. It's literally a room with bunk beds
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, kept very nice. And I've never been in a situation like that before. That's gonna be interesting. Um, and I remember the first couple days I'm in there and you do a lot of church when you're in this program and you go to what they call chapel and you're doing devotionals and then someone will preach with you and or to you, and these are all women that have been through some stuff.
Yeah. So you get to hear their
So you
testimonies.
hear their testimony, but they're really evangelical. So there's a lot of like Holy Spirit speaking in tongues is kind of the stance they're coming from, if that kind of sheds some light on the atmosphere.
Okay.
So there's this really heavy duty preaching that I have never experienced before.
Very like spirit led.
Yes. And I have never seen that before because I'm coming out of like this Baptist
Yeah.
conservative church and I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa. And I remember she was preaching and we're on our knees. She wants us on our knees thinking about everything and the things that I had done in those 2 weeks and allowed happen to me. It was like, oh my gosh, it was like I came to.
Mm.
It was like,
Wow.
you just went through all of that and it just poured out.
Wow.
It was just pouring out. And all of us were just in there sobbing, but it was like, I'm 2 days into this rehab and here it is, girl. Like, this is it. Now it's time to mend what you've broken. It was intense. So, cut to, we're waking up extremely early. We're working all day, hard labor in this thrift store, offloading trucks, cleaning things for the thrift store. It was a lot of work.
That's
You're
crazy.
going to church. You're going to,
It's like a church boot camp.
yes. Someone told me once when we were in there that they had heard that if you do a year in teen challenge, it's like doing the equivalent of 2 years of church in 1 year. Like you're in church a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm in there for several months and things are going really well. And it's just really cool. It was a really neat experience to be around all these women and you're bonding in this really intimate way.
Yeah.
But at some point there were some things going on with the administration there, and so they took me out and moved me to Bakersfield. There's a home in Bakersfield.
Wow, that's pretty far out there, huh?
It is, but it's beautiful. It's like, I went from Long Beach Boulevard and this really bad part of town to
Like the woods, right?
yeah, and it's like open plains and grassy and trees, and they have this cool chapel that you go to, and it's really cool. So I go over there and it's just awesome. And I reflect on it and I tell people that was probably the best year of my life. Truly hard. hard. Like, no one ever made me do hard labor. No one made me make my bed. So it was, and
But
then get along with all these other
yeah,
women.
but they're like instilling something in you at the same time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Things that I had never experienced or learned. And
Maybe there are things that you were missing, like as a youth.
oh, structure.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, my mom was of the mindset that she wanted to be your friend. And when you're young, you're like, yeah, my mom should
Yeah.
be my best friend. I wish that wasn't the case. And that's like one of the things that I'm going to be doing differently as a parent was that I had no curfew. I'm 14, 15, no curfew
Mm-hmm.
in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Las Vegas. And my mom would buy any story I told her. And I'm sexually active at a young age. And I'm out with my boyfriend and this couple that lives on their own and they do drugs and do whatever they want. And we're going to raves and,
Yeah.
you know, so I look back on that and I'm like, I needed a mom. I didn't need a friend. I
Uh-huh.
didn't need anyone to think she was the cool mom. I needed some discipline.
That's a really like important message even to send out to like
Absolutely.
newer moms, you know.
I feel like I would have respected it more. And sure, be the friend, but I definitely look back and think if she would have set the tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Told me her where she stood, I would have respected it a lot more.
Yeah.
There's a respect and discipline that I found as I've gotten older. There's a major respect and discipline because I almost feel more loved when you give me structure with discipline attached,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because yeah, you want me to like you, but you want me to succeed too.
Yeah.
And later on you can make your mistakes, but there's a deep love in discipline disciplining someone and holding up to it and being firm but fair.
Yeah, like accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome to share. Yeah.
yeah, and that's one of my huge takeaways once I kind of got sober and everything was that gosh, I really needed a curfew or to be grounded once in a while. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was never grounded growing up. That was not a thing. So yeah, I just eh, and I don't know what the fine line is to be your kid's
Yeah.
friend and parent,
Mm-hmm.
but
It's like you said in the beginning, we're all trying to figure it out still.
I'm still trying to figure it
But at
out.
least you have like a good foundation. You have
I hope so.
you have your faith, you
Absolutely.
have structure, you have you know that there's going to be times where you have to be parent and not friend. So I think
Yes.
you have a lot that you already have
Well, and I think
built on.
Logan, which is my son, Logan will look back and be like, she wasn't doing it to be a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I remember thinking things my dad did were like, that's not cool. Or, come on, dad, like, relax. But I look back on it and I'm like, I get it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's just trying to make me be a better person.
Yeah.
But something that happened when I was in Teen Challenge was finding the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard all these things as a kid growing up, but you figure I leave church at age 12. I'm in church all that time. We moved to Vegas and I'm not in church anymore. So I only know what I've sat through. And you hear people talking about the Holy Spirit, but it had never clicked or understood or felt that I had felt it.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember being in there and you'd hear worship music. And I remember there were times when I would live in Las Vegas and I would go to this church and it was always the music. And I'd go and I would just break down. I didn't know that was the Holy Spirit. I thought
Yeah.
that was like my conscience, like telling me, what are you doing? But I guess it was the Holy Spirit saying that also. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was an uncomfortable kind of icky feeling, but beautiful at the same time. It's bizarre like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so being in Teen Challenge, we'd hear this worship music and you're going through some of the deepest crap of your life.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's what that is. That's the Holy Spirit.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh.
They put words to what you were feeling.
Exactly. And I never knew that that's what that was. I never connected that. And so there was a lot of things that I was connecting the dots to as a child raised in church to an adult rediscovering it as an adult
Okay.
that I never clicked before. Stories, teachings, things like that. It's just a very different
Yeah.
perspective when you're sitting in a pew with your parents as a kid. Now, putting it into practice as an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in there. I loved the hard work. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It felt like what I now know feels great after like a great workout. It's like,
Hmm.
man, that feeling of you worked hard for something.
Yeah.
I loved that. And we would go on these choir outings, and it, at these choir outings, they would just call on random people in the choir,
Hmm.
which was us. It made up the Teen Challenge choir was made up of the people in Teen Challenge. They go from church to church to procure donations for the nonprofit, which is the rehab.
Hmm.
And you figure they're feeding us 3 fabulous meals a day, and we're doing these, we're in rehab, but it had to be funded through donation. So they would call on you randomly at these huge churches to give your testimony. You never knew if you were going to get called. And I remember the first time they
You always
called
had
on
to have
me.
it ready though,
What
huh?
was like my first choir outing, and they had me do it. And it's this beautiful, huge church. And I'm like, oh no. And here I'm telling this group of strangers like what I've done. And so I mean it became kind of cool though, because I felt like I could tap into things that people maybe needed to hear to help
Hmm.
them discover, oh, maybe they need to
Yeah.
change something about them.
That's how like the Bible always says like God can turn all things to good, you know?
Right.
Like man, like that story that you have and now God is using it,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, now I'm like, how do we put this into play, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, I'm in there, get out and start my life over. I'm in Las Vegas. I eventually moved back to California. I was only there like a year. I moved back to California, um, and I'm starting to amp back up with the pills again. Um, but I ended up getting this great job. I was working for City of Brawley Police Department as a 911 dispatcher and records division, and that was, oh, loved that. That was incredible.
So
That was
you said City of Brawley, so now you're back.
Now I'm back where I grew up,
Yeah.
which I did not want to go, but my mom needed some help. She was kind of sick, and I had just gotten out of a relationship, and she's like, "Just come back down here." I was like, "Oh no."
So your mom moved back over there too then.
Yes, I'm so sorry. At some point she moves back down there, and
Is
back
your
down
dad
to
still
Prudhoe
living there?
Valley. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and my sister's going to high school down there. And so I was like, "Oh gosh, well, okay." So I kind of moved back down there with her. I land this job. So I stay, and I love the job, and still doing the pills. Like I was still doing them.
Oh, so you went back to
I
doing
did go back to
pills.
doing the pills. Um
So you're like, okay, I'm not doing crack anymore,
right.
but you're okay with
Definitely
the
went back to
pills.
doing the pills and functioning and things.
Did you feel like at that point you're like, I can control the pills?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that what it
Oh
was?
yeah. It's like we could figure this out. I won't do this time, but it never
Yeah.
got
Like I know where that goes, but if I just stay on the pills, then we're good.
right. Like we just won't ever do crack again. Like
Yeah.
that's the compromise
Yeah.
you make. So back down there, land this amazing job. I love it, but I'm messing up. Like I'm calling in sick too much.
Okay.
And it kills me because I love that job. That was a great job, calling in sick a lot, but great at the job.
Mm-hmm.
Great at the job, I have to say. So I'm working for the police department. There's these budget cuts, and I was the last one hired, so first one to go. Now, around this time, I had already met Bob, and
Bob is your
Bob is my now husband,
now husband.
my husband, and we had met because his best friend was married to my best friend, and his best friend, his name's Jesse, had he overdosed on drugs, and very unexpected, as he was like a family man. He had a couple kids, and they had great jobs, and he just, again, drugs getting a hold of someone that was completely unexpected,
Yeah.
right?
Did any of you guys know he was doing drugs before he
I
overdosed?
found out, his wife told me, she found out, oh gosh, maybe a month before he passed.
Wow.
So it was right before Father's Day. And I remember she called me just hysterical, saying that he told her, he had revealed to her that he was using. And she had told him, Jesse, I'm not going to tell your kids that you're no longer here for Father's Day. It was just before Father's Day. He ended up passing away. Yeah. And poor thing, I mean, he had come to her bawling, crying, like he must have known it was getting out of control. and he came to her. And so I had known just shortly before he had passed. It was so unexpected. But leading up to that, he was always trying to introduce Bob and I. And we had met once and hung out, and that was about it. But he lived far away. So when Jesse ended up passing away, we're hanging out, and I was like, "Oh, I like this guy," you know? And so from that we kind of started dating. But again, still using pills and things all throughout.
Did Bob know about your pills?
No.
So he didn't.
No. So
Did he know anything of your past?
yes. So I did tell him about my past. It's this weird thing back.
Imagine just like not telling him anything and then telling him everything
Oh,
later.
right. And I had told him, because it's like there's a whole year of my life I've got to account for. And I was super proud coming out of that experience. And I
Mhm.
remember I would tell people about it. I was so proud. Like, oh, I just got out of rehab, just did drugs for like bad and all this stuff.
And now I'm
And people
good.
are like, too much. I don't want to know about it. There
Wow.
was a bad implication with anyone who would tell you that they were a drug addict. So then you're burying it down. You're like,
Mm.
that's a dirty secret. It's shameful. You don't tell people about it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't until like years later where I was like, oh yeah, I was a drug addict and totally and got through it. And but so we meet and we start dating, and I eventually move in with him. Um and gosh, there was a time when we're dating and he's living in Lancaster, and he's telling me, "Oh, like I live far away." And we'd really hit it off, and I was like very enamored with him, and I felt he was with me too. And he's like, "Gosh, I live far away." He's a truck driver, so he's gone a lot. And he tells me now, "I was just trying to save you," because he's trying to say, let's just be friends. And
Mm.
I'm like, this is one of the times in my life where I felt God so deeply. It was wild. It was like tangible. And I remember thinking to myself, no, my heart, and it wasn't even my heart, it was God. It had to be. That's not right because I'm supposed to be here. This is where I feel God's leading me.
Okay.
And I don't feel like I was super plugged in,
Mm.
if you will. Obviously a believer of God, but I don't feel like at that time I was like plugged in. So feeling this was like, what is
Yeah.
this? And I just remember thinking, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. So, okay, we'll be friends. And I remember just like, wow, that's not right. Something's off. This is the path. I know it. This is where I'm being led. I just felt it so significantly. And I remember like I had a couple people ask me out on a date, and I was like, no, not doing it. This is where I'm supposed to be. And it just all fell into place. I can't explain it. Um, but I've never felt anything like that. Like God had already made up his mind,
Mm.
and it was controlling me. It was like, nope, you're not going to do anything over here. This is the person for you.
Wow.
Even if it's not for right now, this is the person for you. And it was confusing to me because I had never felt anything so pulling and so deep
Yeah.
and so convicted, and especially about a person and being with them. And so I just, okay, God, I'm going to leave it up to you. And I did. And it just ended up working out. It's so bizarre, the way that happened. But anyway, I move up here. We move in together. I'm very much still a functioning addict at this point. He does not know. He does not know
Sheesh.
this. Yeah. He does not know this. And we have an apartment, and I'm working full time. He's working a lot, absolutely still using. Cut to a few years later, I remember there were times where I'm like full blown panic trying to figure out what to do. Right. And I don't want him to know. I don't want him to know.
So you don't want to stop. You don't want him to know, but
I'm at a point where I've run out of my pills and I know I'm going to be sick and he's going to see it.
oh, I see.
Right. And now I'm like, what do I do? And, and so I remember calling these numbers because they would have these 1-800 numbers on the TV saying, like, are you trying to get sober?
Mhm.
And it was so sad. I would call these numbers just in a full blown panic. Like, I don't want him to know this about me. He's too good. If he knows this about me,
Mhm. He's gonna leave me.
he's going to leave me. Like, he doesn't deserve this. Right. And so I remember calling these numbers and they would tell me how much it would cost to get on some of these, their drugs to get you sober, basically. Thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
thousands of dollars. And I remember just sitting there one time, just sobbing, like, what do I do? I can't pay for this. Little did I know, cut to years later, I could have just gotten it from my doctor. Didn't know that, but
God had a different plan,
yeah,
huh?
right. So, okay. So we're pregnant now.
Okay.
I'm still using, which is really hard to admit because you get judged so heavily by moms. I hate admitting that. Definitely still using. But at this point, I can't not use. I'm under doctor's care. They're handling it. And they're like, "Okay, we're going to keep it at a safe dose. This is what we're going to do."
At that point, it was more dangerous to get off of it
Yes.
for the baby, right?
Yeah.
Because your body has already,
I've been on it for years.
yeah, and your body, like, it needs it to function.
Right.
Wow.
And they're like, they weren't concerned about any after effects or him being born addicted to anything, but it was like, we're gonna have to keep you on this, right? And so that's like such a shameful, dirty thing to admit, but that was the case. And so, cut to, I have Logan. We're gonna fast forward. So I have Logan, and we are now attending what is now Belong Church. We're going to marriage, like a marriage community group.
Mm-hmm.
While we were pregnant with Logan, Bob and I felt it so strongly that we were so grateful to be pregnant. We're so grateful to be financially stable, healthy, married, all of these things, that we needed to go to church. We just felt so convicted, like we need to go to church and just be thankful, right?
Were you and Bob married at this time?
Yeah, so we ended up getting married. We dated for 3 years and we got married in 2016,
Okay.
or excuse me, 2013. We got married and had an awesome wedding. It was like my dream wedding. It was perfect. We had everyone there that we,
Mm-hmm.
wanted there, and we were living in a like a rental home. We had gotten a home that we're renting together and still using.
Wow.
And we had always had this plan. We're going to date this long and get married. We're going to be married this long and have a baby. And we did. We followed that. And so we're married. 2 years later, we get pregnant. And so we start coming here. And I remember it was, this is another emotional story. It was Good Friday, was the day we found out Logan was a boy.
Okay.
We had come from the ultrasound and we come to church, and we're very just feeling so blessed and so grateful that we need to be
Yeah.
here, thanking God. And I remember being here, and it gets to the point, where you have to nail the sin to the cross.
So, let me explain this real quick.
Oh, please, yes.
At Belong Church, we have this, it's like a tradition that we do here at church on Good Friday, where what we do is we have a cross, and we nail all our sins that we're carrying with us. We write them down on a piece of paper, and then we nail it to that cross, and then it goes up in flames, and it's lighted up, and it's gone, and it's just a very like beautiful representation of what God is lifting up off of us.
Yes.
And so it's really like artistic and creative way of just
Deeply sentimental,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's like there's something about like you taking your sin and just putting it on that cross,
Yeah.
and so
The physical action of doing
yeah,
it rather than thinking it or praying it.
yeah,
And we were pretty new here, and the music, right? The music paired with the nail, whatever you're holding, whatever you have in, nail it to this cross. I remember we're in line, and I remember just writing down on this piece of paper, to end my addiction. I was shaking. I was crying because I'm writing it
so
down.
this is online, you said, though?
Oh, no. This
Oh, you're
is
in the room?
here at
Okay, okay.
we're there at the church, and we're writing it down on that piece of paper, and I'm writing to end my addiction, and I'm shaking, and I'm just like, to write it down, right? And I feel almost like it's even more shameful this time because I'm a wife. I'm going to be a mother. You had this chance of sobriety and you blew it. you're back where you started from pretty much. You have a lot more to lose. And so I write this down and I remember I'm like, oh, I don't want him to see it. And so we're in line, we get it nailed, we physically get to nail it on the cross. And gosh, it must have been a few months. Well, no, it was. I have Logan, and I remember thinking I can't go to these doctor's appointments and spend hours waiting with the anxiety of getting my story straight so that I could get my refill or get the next whatever. I'm not going to carry a baby to this.
Mhm.
This is madness. And here I'm a new mom. I'm 3 months in, and I look into getting on what's called Suboxone. And for people that don't know, Suboxone is it's a narcotic blocker,
Okay.
essentially. So you take it, and if you were to take any type of narcotic, an opiate, it's an opioid blocker. If you were to take any type of opiate, you'd be physically ill. You'd be violently ill,
Yeah.
and it would not do anything for you. You would not get any type of high, you'd be ill. And I remember I had made this choice. I made this appointment with the doctor. Now, this was intimidating. I'm going to go tell this medical professional. Now, by telling this medical professional, I'm giving up any capability of going doctor shopping, right?
Mm.
I tell him it's probably going to be noted somewhere
Mm.
in a DEA file because they can look you up to see how much your narcotics you're getting. And I'm like, this is it. Like, once I tell this doctor, there's no more going out there and dabbling. It felt like a really, really, really big decision. Like, it just felt like, are you ready to give this up? And you're going to go tell this person everything you've been doing, a doctor. It just felt really like a lot. And the number one thing that meant so much to me at that appointment was, like my dad, they treated me like a normal human being,
Wow.
like a patient.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not, here's this drug addict, here's this girl who just wants pills, or it was like, oh, okay, yeah, here you're going to be seen. And that to me was one of the hugest steps I've ever taken in my life. It was absolutely pivotal in my life that day, that doctor's appointment, that decision. Logan is with me, 3 months old. And that doctor asked me everything. And it was the first time I had told anyone everything, how I did it, what I did, how many I took. And I remember I didn't lie. And I always lied around that stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving there feeling like $1,000,000. I was like, whoa. I felt so proud of myself. Like, you didn't lie your way out of this
Like you did it.
and you don't feel shameful. And so that was just over 5 years ago that I started taking that. And I just wish I would have found it sooner.
So I think my question is,
Yeah.
how did Bob find out?
Yes. Here we go. So we would be in our marriage community group, awesome group. And it was led by our friends, Linda and Andy. And we would tell stories and recall things. And I started being a little bit more comfortable
Mhm.
with sharing that, oh, I was using drugs at this time, hoping it would be a fact that I could slide in there and Bob wouldn't hear it or something. I don't know what I was hoping. But he picked up on those things, and
Mm.
we never really talked about it and had it out until I got on that medication. But Bob too, I feel like didn't understand what a big deal the Suboxone was either, the
Mm.
medication that I'm going to take. And that it was almost like I was trying to tell him this is how bad it is, and now I'm on this, but
But he's more like, okay.
oh, now you're on a new med. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't think he understood it, and I wasn't ready to say like I'm a total addict again and I've been
Gravity
lying,
of
and
it.
yeah, the shame. And so I remember there was one night we're hanging out. Oh, it's heartbreaking. And he had talked about something I had said in group. He says, you think I didn't catch that? And I did. And he was crying and
Man.
wanting to know, like, how much did I take advantage? How much did I use him? It was it was the most heartbreaking conversation I've ever had with him. He's sobbing. I'm apologizing, saying, I never wanted you to feel used or or manipulated.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that is the collateral damage that is addiction. It's just you use everybody, and it's so selfish. And I'm not that person. And I tell people,
Mm-hmm.
anyone who's in it or able to get out, it's so hard. Nobody understands unless they're in it or have a loved one. They can sort of grasp the idea. But like Bob, he told me once, I've never been addicted to anything, so I don't understand the
Yeah.
severity or the heaviness of it. So, to get out of that, I applaud anyone because it is so difficult. But we had this conversation. He's just crying, head in his hands, sobbing. And so I was telling him, I mean, I never meant for this and that. And I got sober because of Logan.
Yeah.
It was because of Logan. I had to do it. I couldn't live this life anymore. So it was like little bits of me wanting to reveal it in community group,
Mm-hmm.
in this marriage community group, and hoping it could just slide by. And it's like, you're sober now. Who cares? I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That was, oh gosh, one of the least favorite moments of my life, obviously. But
Yeah.
the person that,
How long had you guys been married before he found out?
oh gosh, let's see, probably I had Logan in 2016, so we'd been married like 3 years.
3 years.
But
And
together like more.
yeah. And in that time, so because I kind of want to like just piece it
Yeah,
more together. So you nail your addiction to the cross.
yeah,
Okay? And
yeah.
then from there, how long is it before you talk to your doctor about it and you start beginning that process?
um so we found out Logan was a boy on that visit, so it was like 16 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have Logan,
So you
and
have Logan.
yeah, he's in my tummy. He's in my stomach.
Okay.
So we had determined he was a boy
Yeah, yeah.
earlier that day. So I'm 16 weeks pregnant with Logan. We now know he's a boy. Cut to, we have Logan, and 3 months after I have Logan. So we nail it to the cross Good
Mm-hmm.
Friday, and 3 months after I delivered Logan.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it took about 3 months.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
It was a process
It
then.
was a process. Just because I didn't know how to get the drug, and I didn't know if I was ready to
Mm-hmm.
say, doctor, I need this drug, because if I did, then you're getting rid of your
Addiction.
ability to
Yeah.
get anything else. Yeah.
How long did it take you to come off of like?
So this is the cool thing. You go 24 hours before you can ingest the Suboxone.
Mhm,
The Suboxone is the film that goes under your tongue, and it blocks the opiates, right?
mhm.
I never touched another one.
Wow,
Never
that's
touched
amazing.
another one. Some people will have some withdrawal. Um, I luckily I didn't. I think it's kind of rare from what I understand. And you have no cravings. It's like, God, I wish I would have
Is
had it
this
years ago.
an ongoing thing that you have to
Yeah.
take?
So I've been on it for just over 5 years, and it's a process where we've been tapering, right?
Okay.
So I'm ready. I've been ready to be done. I'm in a really great place, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sober. Um, I'm sober from what I'm addicted to. I don't want people to like see me have a beer on my Instagram and think, no,
Yeah.
you're not.
Yeah.
But I am sober from what debilitated me for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where it's an active, years long situation to get me off of it.
Yeah.
And recently I came very close, but in order to get over this, there's a major fire I have to walk through, because um recently I was almost off of it, and uh I went through an extremely crazy withdrawal. So I
Wow.
like blacked out, collapsed, and it was bad. And so the doctor's like, okay, we're gonna have to like spread this out a little longer. But I'm proud to say that like I'm still on it. I wish more people knew that that existed for like
Yeah.
opiate abuse. I wish I would have found it years ago. And it's been a game changer, huge game
Yeah.
changer.
Yeah. I think it's important too though that it's just a constant reminder that we always need God. We always need grace.
My gosh, yes. I can tell you that. So I'm going to turn 40 on the 4th, and we're combining that with 5 years sober. I'm a wife and mother. I'm I'm sober, right? And there are things in my life that are clicking
Mm-hmm.
that I've never experienced before, right? It's like you've been given all these life lessons and these things that your parents raised you, like, you don't do this, you need to do
Yeah.
that. And we listen, but we never absorb or put it into action.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in the last year, there's something that has clicked. And all of those things, all of that sage wisdom and advice, life advice, it's like I'm finding putting it into action, and life is just kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
I am extremely happy. And I wish I could explain a little better, but it's like a click that happens. It's like, okay, this is all the things people were trying to teach me to make my life simpler.
Mm-hmm.
But, we like to do things the hard way or don't
Yeah.
want to listen to advice. And it's
Yeah.
almost like if I just do the things the people were saying, and you find this momentum in that, and you're like, wow, life is coasting by.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that had to do with my sobriety. But also I became so heavily involved and so much more plugged into church.
Mm-hmm.
There is a time when I'm pregnant with Logan, and now I'm like, right, I'm sober. I'm no longer needing to work. I'm able to be home with my son, but I'm social. I need human interaction.
Yeah.
Bob's gone for work all the time, and now I'm with a new baby. Family is spread all over the place. I don't have any help. It's just me and my son. And I was like, I need a community. Like, I need
Mm-hmm.
people. This is not okay for me. And I had no friends around. And I told Bob there was one day where we'd been coming regularly, and I told him it's like community week, community group week, where they're plugging all the
Yeah.
groups. I said, I'm signing up for every single one that I can. And if I don't make friends, then there's something wrong with me. And so I signed up for two. There was a marriage one and a new mother's one. And like, it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. And I never understood up until that point why people did church groups. I
Yeah.
never got it. But there's a magic that happens when you get these, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 people together. And not every community group's going to have that magic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them are Bible studies, some of them are living life together, but there was something in there that was just incredible. There was like an older couple, a younger couple, a couple that had already been through that particular group that were leading it, and us that were new with a new baby. And it was just really cool.
Yeah.
And from that, I wanted to get more involved and volunteer. And I built my community from my church.
Mm-hmm.
And those bonds and those connections were way deep.
Yeah.
And it came when I really needed it. So being plugged in that way, sober and the whole thing, and two, in getting sober, there's a whole new motivation for life that
Yeah.
I never tapped into before.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
That's so cool to hear.
Yeah, it's this whole last year has been wild. Um, I mentioned earlier that, like, I deal with chronic insomnia. I'm just under a year now. They've finally figured out, like, a medication that I can take that helps me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the best sleep of my entire life the last 9, 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, I'm also able to do all kinds of other things,
Okay.
right? Like, I can commit to more things in my life, have more
Wow.
hours in my day,
Yeah.
which is wild. It's just making my whole world explode. It's
So
really
cool.
neat.
And recently you've just been really I see you're pushing for your health now. Like, and that's really cool to see.
Which is weird for people in my family to see, because they're like, who is this? Well, so I just under 2 years ago, I lost my mom suddenly to cancer. Super traumatic experience, the way the whole thing went down. Well, in that, growing up, I was always in ballet or dance of some sort, and
Mm-hmm.
she had me in full Clodico dance. And I had gone to my nephew's mariachi concert at his college, and I was in there just feeling so inspired. And one thing that I had prayed for over a decade, God, I need more motivation. I just want to feel motivated. Before drugs, I'd feel so motivated by art and photography and all these things. and it was dead. I was dead inside. I'm
Mm.
like, God, I just want to feel that again. I want to feel motivated for something again. And when I was at that concert, I was like, God, I would love to dance again. Oh, I love dancing. I love performing. And I thought, why don't you? Why
Yeah.
don't you? You could do it. So I didn't tell anybody. And I was like, I'm going to try it for a month. If it doesn't work out, at
Mhm.
least nobody knew about it. And so I'm in there and I'm leaving every dance class high as though I'm on drugs. No
Wow.
joke. And I'm like, this is it. I'm tapping into something that was dead for years. It was like I'm growing these nerves back that I killed
Yeah.
with the drugs. And once I started the drugs, I always felt like I will never get back to who that Kristen was before the drugs.
Yeah.
There's no way, right? This is the first time in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, old friend. That's you. We're
Oh,
back. Like,
yeah.
we're back. And so I've
That's
been
so cool to
going
hear.
to folklorico dance classes. It's going to be a year this month. And we do performances.
Yeah.
There's other mothers my age in there. And it's something to honor my mom because out of all the dances she put me in, that her favorite was always folklorico dance. And so that's my way to honor my
And that's the one with
mom.
the big dresses, right?
Yeah, so I'm waving big old dresses around Jalisco and Sinaloa
That's so cool.
and so that's my way to honor her and grieve for her, but
Mhm.
honor her in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, I was like, I just want to get better at this. You need to be pretty strong to lift these
Oh, I
dresses.
bet.
It's a hard work. And so I got in touch with one of my dance partners, her trainer, and I was like, I've always wanted to try this, but I'm not
Mhm.
athletic by any means, or you would never see me doing anything like this. It's very out of my comfort zone. I'm like, well, getting out of the comfort zone is what we're doing right now. It's the name of the game. Let's strike. And so I started, and I never anticipated I would like it as much as I do.
That's
Like,
so
I
cool.
love it. I would leave same feeling like you're on drugs. Like, you're like, now I am mashed potatoes and gravy, bread and butter. I love all the bad things. I don't want physical fitness. I never did. I was never like athletic growing up. That was not my jam. So my family's kind of like,
What's going on
what?
here?
What is she okay? Is she all right? And so
You're like, you're more than okay now.
I'm more than okay now. And I do it and I leave and I'm just amazed. And the the walls that I'm breaking down just right there by doing a few more push-ups than I did the week before
Yeah.
and like, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Hmm.
And then a trainer telling me, like, no, you're really strong. Like, you're naturally strong. I'm like, huh? What? Who? What? No one's ever told me I'm strong in my life.
Yeah.
So finding these new talents and things that I'm like, man, I wish I would have known this was inside of me because I could have done some really cool things for more years,
Yeah.
right? I could
Yeah.
have like started years ago, but at least I'm there now and that's what counts. But yeah, life is really cool right now.
That's so awesome
Really
to hear.
cool. Yeah.
That's so cool to hear. And Kristen, just thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah, thank
story with
you.
us. You
Thank
know,
you. I hope you guys were able to follow along and
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be inspired by your
oh,
story.
that'd be cool.
And um, for any of you guys watching, keep Kristen in prayer as well
Oh,
to
thank
remain
you.
strong, But it's a really awesome story. And thank you so much,
Yeah,
Kristen.
thank you, John, for having me. This
Of
is awesome.
course. Yeah. See you guys next time.
Thanks.